play a game?
Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Getting geeky in Little Rock, it's Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for tuning in, whether you're listening live on, what is today, the 17th, August 17th, at 1 p.m. Central in the Little Rock, Central Arkansas area on 101.1 FM The Answer, or via the live stream at 1011fmtheanswer.com. Or if you're listening by podcast, the show does go out after the fact, sometimes edited with different content. So, you know, some people listen to the podcast over the radio show, but some people prefer the radio show. So I always like to do both. And there's an energy to live radio you just can't get anywhere else. But anyway, if you're listening by podcast or on Krypton Radio or on YouTube or anything like that, if you're listening to the show after the live broadcast, there will be show notes up at shaneplays.com, so you can go check those out. And thanks so much for listening, no matter how you're joining. I'm just really, really glad that you're here, and I appreciate it very much. Now, we got a lot to cover today, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. My guest returning to the show, I know he's been on at least once, if not more, is Heyl. He does many things in the RPG world. He does Arkansas RPG Con. You know, we have a partnership where we promote each other for Arkansas RPG Con, which is in November this year. I'll let Carl plug that. And then he's also one of the hosts of the Crusader podcast, which is a podcast for the Castles and Crusades / Troll Lord Games RPGs. And then he's also, one of the main things we're going to be talking about today is Carl is probably the person I know personally that has run the most D&D or RPG games for kids. So later today, after we, do some news items and stuff like that, we're going to dive a little bit into what it's like to run an RPG for kids. And then hopefully Carl will have some advice or perspective to share, because I know he's done it before. He did sort of a pilot podcast one time with his kids that was really fascinating. So after the news, that's going to be our main topic. So as far as introducing you, Carl, and covering what you do, what is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'm also one of the hosts of Save or Die, podcast about classic Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you do so much. Yeah, in fact, you and DM, was it DM Crispy?
Yes.
Yeah, it came on. Oh, it's been a year or two, because we were talking about OSR, old school Renaissance, or old school rules, however you want to say that, and we talked about Save or Die. So there's a Shane Plays Geek Talk show way back in the archives that people can go listen to. I'll try to remember to add that to the show notes. So you do Save or Die podcast, you do the Crusader podcast, you do Arkansas RPG Con, and then I also see you very often at local events just running games for kids. And then to give people an idea of your kind of sense of humor and creativity and your love of OSR gaming, at the most recent North Texas RPG Con, you did Discos and Dragons. Why don't you explain real quick what Discos and Dragons was?
Absolutely. Discos and Dragons is 1970s Dungeons and Dragons using only 1970s dice, miniatures, and materials. So we play on an outdoor survival board, as they suggest doing in the original D&D box set, and we use a bunch of old Grenadier and Ral Partha and minifigs miniatures. And we use old dice with D20s that only go from 0 to 9 twice, and you have to either color them in different colors on the 10s and 20s, or the 1s and 10s place, I should say. And it's great. It's fantastic fun, and it's kind of like half a free-form game and half a history exhibit.
That's really neat. So did anybody show up dressed in only 70s clothes? That would have been pretty great. Right?
Not to my knowledge.
Well, I'll tell you.
I won't judge anyone on their fashion sense.
I would love to, like they'll have parties that are like you have to dress like 60s or whatever. I think it'd be fun to do a game like where you set it in the 70s or the 80s, and you can only use materials from that decade, and also, you have to like try to hit like a thrift store or something and find stuff, so that would be a lot of fun.
Get some 70s disco going, get some Cab Cola.
Some bell bottoms and some tank tops and So one other thing, just to kind of key on what you mentioned there, or to play off of that, I bought, I think it was last year or maybe earlier this year, Gary Con did some limited edition Gary Con dice. They're the dice, like the size and the feel and the numbering system from like the 70s. And like you said, like a D20 only goes, was it 1 through 9 or 0 through 9?
Yeah, it's 0 through 9 because it's also your percentile die.
Right. And some people color them in, but another trick that some people do, and that I've started using these dice, and I really enjoy the feel of them. And you can also roll another dice with it, like a D6 or something. And if it's the if it's the upper half of that other dice, like say for example, I roll a D6 with it, then if a 9 comes up, then on the D20, then if the D6 is 1 through 3, that's a 9. If it's 4 through 6, it's a 19. So that's another way that people do it. So anyway,
that's called a control die.
Yes.
It's called a control die. And when you roll them together, the best thing about rolling dice that way is they go clicky-clacky.
They do go clicky-clacky. And these big Gary Con dice they're meaty. They thunk on the table, and I love that so much. So, all right, anyway, I'm gonna move us. We got a lot to cover today, and I want to make sure to give plenty of time to talking about RPGs for kids. So what I'm gonna do my Zach banter. Normally later in the show, we'll do the Zach banter, but there's a reason that I've got to do the Zach banter first. So if people don't know, and boy, do we have a doozy today. The head of my news team, Sal. Okay, there's this been continuing drama for like 2 years now, and it keeps escalating. Where if I don't banter with Zach, then it's not Sal, it's his grandmother and her dog Muffin get really upset at me, and Muffin has started just doing all kinds of crazy things to make my life harder and to kind of attack the show, sabotage the show, never to take it off the air. Well, there was a transmitter thing one time, but anyway, so we've tried to keep an eye on it. We have the Mobley Detective Agency, who's been very, very helpful in monitoring Muffin's texts and emails and whatnot, and providing me intelligence. Now, are you familiar with the ongoing Muffin saga at all, Carl? I know you listen to the show sometimes.
Absolutely. I mean,
okay.
If Muffin doesn't give you problems, I'll give you problems. I love the banter with Zach.
Are you a Muffin? Are you a Muffin agent, Carl?
Yes.
Is this a long game?
I'm a Splinter Cell.
let's talk about long games. So it just so happens today that I'm broadcasting from home for multiple reasons. However, were we at the studio, you would see a lot of sad faces. So several months ago, we had a new employee join the news team and to help out around the Shane Plays Geek Talk offices. And her name is Miss Pennyfingers. And she was amazing. And she was just proactive. She was a go-getter. She became really indispensable. And then Sal and Miss Pennyfingers developed an office romance. Well, all this time, we've also been, the Mobley Detective Agency has been intercepting communications about Operation Uno Digits. And we couldn't tell what was going on, but now we know. The sudden but inevitable betrayal has happened, Carl. So Uno is 1, right? And a penny is 1 cent. And a digit could be a finger. And so fingers, Miss Pennyfingers. So she was Uno Digits. She was Operation Uno Digits, Carl. And last weekend, I'm just devastated. And Sal we can't even get him to leave his bedroom. He's just at home under the blankets eating ramen noodles with cold water. We're really worried about him. So last weekend, Sal and Miss Pennyfingers went off to get married, and she jilted him at the altar and said, I'm an agent of Muffin, and I've never loved you, and how could you even dare dream you could be? And she just disappeared. Left him at the altar, devastated. And so I guess he's trying to sabotage the news segment. Or maybe he just, doesn't like that Sal isn't on his side. I don't know. So now the office is in disarray. The news team is in disarray. It's betrayal. Machiavellian? It's Machiavellian machinations. But we also found she was installing malware and all kinds of surveillance software all over our computer network. So the whole time we thought we were monitoring Muffin, we were being monitored. So it's crazy. What did you think when you found out all this, Zach?
I really, to tell you the truth, I didn't know how to react to it. Oh,
so you're just now, no, you didn't notice all the craziness?
I just didn't know how to react.
Do you feel bad for Sal?
I kind of do. I do.
Yeah. Has he answered any of your texts?
No, he has not.
The only thing is every time I text him, he asks for more ramen noodles. But he won't let anybody. It's like he's punishing himself.
Yeah.
What is that? What's that called, Carl? When you whip yourself? Is it self-flagellation?
Self-flagellation.
I guess that. Yeah. I don't know. We got serious problems here. I don't know what we're going to do. But so I went out, I gave Sal, I said, look, I know you've just been through one of the worst experiences of your life. So take like an hour off today and, we'll see you here in a little bit. I went ahead and did the news for the news team, but we've lost files. I mean, it's crazy. We're going to be in disarray around here forever. Carl, I hope you never have a Muffin as an arch nemesis.
Me too.
Folks, remember, for every $1 of support the show gets through Patreon, the news team gets a penny an hour raise. And I mean, what a deal. And we're about to re-enter negotiations. Last year, the news team's union was negotiating for 2 pennies per $1 of support. And, we'll see. And we couldn't come to an agreement on that. So this year, I think those negotiations are about to begin. It's just crazy. I need you to be extra diligent up there, Zach. Keep an eye out for shenanigans.
I will.
All right, on to the banter, Zach. I watched a couple of movies recently. So the first one that I watched with the family was Detective Pikachu. Have you seen that yet?
I never watched that.
You haven't? Are you a Pokemon guy at all?
I chose Digimon over Pokemon.
Okay, so you need Detective Digimon before you'll watch the movie.
Exactly.
All right, I got you. What about you, Carl? Or is anybody in your family a Pokemon fan?
My kids are aware of its existence through mass marketing only, pretty much. Okay. I mean, we don't really play the game. They have a few of the cards, but because there's so many shirts and so many backpacks, I mean, they know what it is. And they
can't get away from it. Well, this is a live action movie with a lot of CGI that stars Ryan Reynolds as the voice of Pikachu, Detective Pikachu, and it's kind of a wonderful movie to watch once, whether you are into Pokemon or not, because there's just so much visually going on, and you get to see all these Pokemon that you get exposed to through pop culture. Just it's in the air, like you said, it's just out there,
right?
And you get to see them live action and doing pretty funny stuff. So I enjoyed it. I liked it.
Okay.
And the guy that I don't know, from Jurassic World: Fallen Empire, I think was the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
He was like the computer guy.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he's the main, he's like the hopeful Pokemon trainer whose dreams were dashed, so he hates Pokemon, but then he has to get teamed up with a talking Pokemon and all that stuff. So it's a buddy cop / special effects extravaganza. The story itself's just a hot mess. It doesn't, but I guess considering the age group, that it's going after, it doesn't matter,
Okay.
But yeah, if you try, it's just a hot mess. It really is. And the other movie Sheila and I watched this week, and we both really liked it, was Battle Angel Alita.
Yes.
I'd heard good things about it.
Yeah.
And it not only held up to the hype, but I think even surpassed the hype. Very well done.
Okay, because me and Dave went to go see that. How many months ago that movie came out? It was earlier this year, but we both enjoyed that movie. That's cool to hear. Yeah,
it was amazing, and the that effect they did with her eyes.
Yes.
It looks completely natural.
Mm-hmm.
After a while, you just stop thinking of it. You don't even think of it as a special effect.
Correct.
Now, Carl, have you seen it?
I have not. I'm very boring.
It's good. I mean, and my wife.
I need to. Yeah, it's hard to get out to movies, but yeah.
Well, this is one of my D&D players lent me his DVDs. Like, have you seen this movie yet? I'm like, no, and he brought me the DVD to borrow. So, but it's what Ghost in the Shell should have been, right? The live action Ghost in the Shell was practically dull,
right?
But Battle Angel Alita was, whether you're into anime or manga, it's a great action movie with a lot of cyberpunk.
Yeah,
but it's got a lot of heart, and the actress that played Alita was superb.
Mm-hmm.
So really, really good.
That's cool.
Yeah. So you're not now? I know this weekend you were doing some more chores around the house, but have you seen anything since last weekend? Because last weekend I think we talked about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
right? And
like another movie I can't even remember now. Have you seen anything else?
I just saw Hobbs and Shaw this past Sunday.
What'd you think?
That movie is fantastic and it's hilarious.
Is it?
It is.
Yeah.
It's a movie.
That's Dwayne Johnson and
Jason Statham.
Yeah, but it's set in the Fast and Furious universe, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So it's 1 or 2 thumbs up from Zach.
5 thumbs up.
5 thumbs up.
5 thumbs up.
Oh, you're mutating. So Muffin must have left some uranium up there or something, so you're mutating.
I am,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I noticed I had a kind of weird twitch in my eye the other day. I hope I didn't get any of that radiation when I was up there yesterday guest hosting Dave Ellswick. Another thing, just real quick, news, TV type stuff. I saw that Krypton is not being renewed for a 3rd season.
Oh, okay.
And I got actually, and there was going to be a Lobo spinoff. And I pushed that out, and I got a lot of reaction on that.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know that. I mean, I guess it's got some hardcore fans because there was some profanity posted in response to that news that I pushed out.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. Well, let's move on. I do want to get some news in, and then we can talk about. We're going to be talking about running D&D/RPG games for kids, and Carl has a lot of experience on that. So let's go ahead and turn on the microphone in the super secret newsroom. All right, there we go. Look at that, working hard on a Saturday. That's right. Professionally produced news sound right there. If you call me throwing it together without having a clue what I was doing about 4 years ago, professionally produced. All right, so Carl, are you a Wheel of Time fan at all? The Robert Jordan books.
I have not read them at all.
Okay. Well, they're one of the bigger fantasy series out there. So I'm sure a lot of our D&D and RPG players either read it or are aware of it. Quick news item here. People can go to the show notes and grab the link and learn more. But they've cast some more cast members. I guess there's going to be an Amazon TV series based on the Wheel of Time. Everybody's wanting to jump on that Game of Thrones action now that Game of Thrones is over. There's an article in Newsweek. The byline is Andrew Whalen, and they've got casting for Randall Thor, Perrin, Matt Cawthon, Nineveh, Egwene, and Moraine, I think, who had been cast previously. But having read about the first 7 or 8 books, these characters look like I would expect the characters to look. I think they're all relatively unknown, but they look good, And now Perrin, the guy who plays Perrin, people who read the books are going to know what I'm talking about. He needs to bulk up a little bit, but it visually anyway, it looks like really good casting. So, and I'm not sure when the series is actually coming to Amazon, but just search for Wheel of Time cast members or check out the show notes if you're listening to the non-live show, and you can learn more. So let's see here. Carl, do you want to talk about Warhammer RPG or a free, huge RPG dungeon map?
Let's talk about the free, huge RPG dungeon map.
All right, let's do that. I think that's a fantastic idea. So I'm pretty sure I posted this in the Arkansas RPG Con Facebook page a couple of weeks ago. But there is a guy out there. He's not doing it through Patreon. He's not kickstarting it. He's just doing it for free. He's like, I've loved RPGs forever, and I want to give back, enjoy. And so the headline, this is for Krypton Radio, who is one of the venues that the show goes on after the fact. But they posted an article that says the 1 million square feet of RPG dungeon map free. Free isn't really free, and that's me editorializing on top of that. But British tabletop role player Zach Nicotel, I guess that's maybe his Reddit username. I'm not sure. He produced 1 million square feet of original battle maps, and you can use them, in virtual tabletops like Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds, or you could just print them out and use them how you want. And he's giving it all away for free. So if you go to it's his DeviantArt page, so he has a DeviantArt page. And it's ZATNIKOTEL. If you just search for 1 million square feet of free map, and you'll find it. But it's got a roadway, an underground lake, river crossing, spider lair, underground village. All lava caves, just all kinds of stuff. And he says, please remember, all of my maps, including these and the gridded versions, are completely free. It's just my way to give back to the hobby that I enjoyed so much over 36 years. So does that... And
they look great.
They do look good. Yeah, they look really good. And there's 16 individual maps. Each one is a grid of 50 by 50 1-inch squares. And if you printed all of them out and put them together, that would be a million square feet. So thank you, unpronounceable, cool RPG player dude. And, search for that, folks, if you're out there. I mean, it's free. Why not, right? At least download it. And you never know when you might be able to use it. But if you go to the Krypton Radio link, then it's got some examples of the individual square maps. And then it also has an image of all of them connected together. And in all of them connected together, it reminds me of like a Tomb of Horrors type dungeon. It's just this big, crazy, all kinds of different terrain and stuff. So have you downloaded these yet or messed with them at all, Carl?
I have just seen them through social media. I have not gone on. I don't do a lot on a virtual tabletop, but of course these could be printed out and used at the table. Right. But now that I'm getting a better look at them, I think I better get on that.
Better grab it.
Great.
Yeah, they do look really good. So that's really nice. And trust me, I have nothing against Patreon, Kickstarter, Indigo, PayPal tip jars. I got nothing against that. But to see somebody say, hey, just take it. I don't care. Take it for free. That's nice, right? That's nice. All right, I'm gonna mention the Warhammer RPG Humble Bundle really quickly. There is a Humble Bundle for Warhammer 40K Dark Heresy by Cubicle 7. You can get stuff like the 2nd edition core rulebook, the Game Master's Kit, the Inquisitor's Handbook, Purge the Unclean, and a lot more. And that is, they're all digital. They're going to be PDFs. It's going to give you keys to redeem it like RPG Now is what's going to happen. But one of the reasons I wanted to call this out, one, it's a great resource to get Warhammer 40K RPG books at a really reasonable rate. I mean, it's $456 worth of books, and, for as little as $1. And what happens when you support stuff through Humble Bundle, the publisher, Cubicle 7, gets some money, Humble Bundle gets some money, and then a charity will get some money. And in this case, the charity that you would be supporting is Doctors Without Borders. And that's a pretty darn good charity right there. Now, another reason I'm mentioning this is I do have Humble Bundle affiliate links. So if you go to the show notes, or if you go to shaneplays.com and find a link to the Humble Bundle through there, that'll be an affiliate link, and I would get I would get a small percentage of of a very small percentage. It doesn't impact the charity or anything like and it's just another way to support the show. So, all right. Do you want to know about, we'll do one more news item here, and then we'll talk about the Lost City of Gaxmoor 5e Kickstarter briefly, because I'm going to do a live stream on that with Steven Chenault and some others soon.
Oh, fantastic.
No, I'm definitely going to support it. I've already supported the Kickstarter, but do you want to know about Vampire 5 organized play launching or RuneQuest creator rejoining Chaosium?
Well, can I tell you about something that I think will blow your mind?
Yes,
Cube
please.
of Death. Have you heard about Cube of Death?
Is this one of these things where you get this like high premium box full of all kinds of like miniatures and props and accessories to play a game with?
This is no, it's not a subscription. It's not a loot crate service. It is a new game from the new TSR. They are kickstarting it now, and it's a geek trivia game / dungeon crawler.
So you defeat monsters through trivia?
Yes, exactly.
That sounds
right.
fun. Yeah, that sounds great.
It sounds neat. Yeah,
I've got it. I'm going to go take a look
today.
Yeah. Wow.
And I mean, so you encounter the orc, and you're like, okay, here's your trivia question.
That is
how
fun.
many members of the fellowship were there?
Right.
9. Okay, you did 5 damage on the orc. I mean, hilarious. What a fantastic
looks
idea.
Great. What is their goal and how close are they to it? Do you know?
They just launched. They have 26 days to go. Their goal is 10,000. They're at 1,800.
Well, they'll make it. I can't imagine that won't make it. So that sounds really fun. Yeah, I'll add that to the show notes. The Cube of Death. So does it look like Trivial Pursuit? What does it look like? What is the mock-up?
It looks like a card-based dungeon crawler with then trivia cards to handle your mechanics. And so your trivia cards span anything geek trivia, Robotech, Monty Python, Stranger Things, Lord of the Rings, role-playing games, horror. And you choose a trivia card based on its difficulty in order to get a better effect.
Wow. That sounds great. Okay, so what we're going to do, because I got to get us to a break so we can have at least, a good 20 minutes or so to talk about the kid stuff. But I want to do this. Folks, just to let you know, Vampire 5 organized play system, it'd be like Adventurers League or something like that, or the Pathfinder Society. But this is for Vampire the Masquerade, 5th edition through Modifius. There's a news item out there from Ian World. I'll link that on the show notes with the information on that. Or, just go search for Vampire Organized Play and you'll find it. This is one of the RuneQuest creator, Steve Perrin. He's one of the big names in, the genesis of RPGs and fantasy RPGs is returning. He originally created RuneQuest, which I believe that's the world of Glorantha, which is famous in its own right. But it was a revolutionary fantasy RPG game, and it made heavy use of percentile dice in Greg Stafford's Glorantha setting. So there's 2 reasons I want to mention this. One, Steve's coming back, which is good because a lot of these RPG designers that are super famous in the RPG world, you would think they're just drowning in work. And I don't know Steve Perrin's personal situation. He may be great, but some of these RPG, these RPG folks that everything has been built on their shoulders, they could use the work, and it's good to see them coming back in. So good for Steve Perrin. And the other thing that I want to mention on this is I met Steve Perrin at North Texas RPG Con, which I know about because of Carl Heyl, and Steve's going to be coming on the show soon. Last thing, let's make sure to highlight this, Carl. There is a Kickstarter out there right now to convert the Lost City of Gaxmoor, which is out there. I think is it currently on the Sage engine or the Siege engine? What's the current
It has been
Lost City
previously released both under D20 and Siege engine.
Okay.
Now this is of course 5th edition fantasy version,
right?
Coming soon.
Right. So what this is Troll Lord Games. Castles and Crusades, those folks, Steven Chenault and all them, and now this was written by Luke and Ernie Gygax, who are the sons of Gary Gygax, who is, incredibly monumentally pivotal to the history of D&D and role-playing games. And Troll Lord Games, had the honor of being some of the last people to work with Gary at an ongoing basis, and they built up relationships. But anyway, so we've had a D20 version of it, and it's a big setting / dungeon called Gaxmoor, and it's direct lineage from Gary Gygax. I mean, his sons created this thing. It's been out for the Siege Engine and D20, and now there's a Kickstarter to convert it to 5e, which is huge because so many people are playing 5e right now. So it's going to continue to get, that legacy and that history of gaming and the people involved, continuing to bring it in to modern gaming. And, Carl, I'm sure you've seen, this Kickstarter went boom. It funded like almost immediately. They were asking for 30,000. It funded in a couple of hours, and they're up to like 90,000 or something. And it still has like 2 or 3 weeks to go. Yeah,
and it just looks great. The art's fantastic. It looks wonderful. And it's a huge ruined city to explore, and then there's areas underneath the city, and then there's wilderness encounters around the city. You get a ton of stuff.
It's kind of like, it's a setting and a dungeon. It's kind of like Keep on the Borderlands, like taken to like 3 or 4 more exponential levels up. There's all kinds of stuff there. And you can, you and your party can follow your nose on how you want to play it. So if I'm understanding it right. So
right. And it takes you, if you run through it, it'll take you from levels 1 to 10. Like it's that big a adventure.
Yeah. And again, Luke and Ernie Gygax created it. And I believe that Jason Vey with Trollord Games that does not Pulp. What's the name of it? Amazing Adventures and other things. He's going to be helping convert it over to 5e. Okay, so folks, we're going to get to a break so that we can get back and talk about doing role-playing games for kids. I just want to mention again real quick, you can always find the show notes and links at shaneplays.com. Last week's show is out in the podcast version. That was episode 195, which is RPG collecting and Game Hole Con with Alex Kammer. He was going to come on this week. We had it all set up, and then he got thrown a curveball, but I think we're going to try to have him on in September for part 2 of that, where we talk about RPG design and True Dungeon. Podcast goes on blog, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Podbean, SoundCloud, YouTube, and more. And last but never least, Shane Plays is carried on Krypton Radio. Krypton Radio is SciFi for your Wi-Fi. KryptonRadio.com. All right, Zach, go ahead and get us to a break. Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today. Are you a fan of thrilling adventure, daring suspense, and just a touch of romance? Cursova has you covered. Since 2016, Cursova has been publishing the very best in contemporary fantasy and science fiction, retro pulp, and for you D&D gamers, Appendix N style fiction. Based in Little Rock, you can pick up their flagship magazine locally or at Michael Tierney's The Comic Book Store on Treasure Hill Road or Collector's Edition on JFK in North Little Rock. Swing by one of Michael's stores and pick up an issue or find them on Amazon. C-I-R-S-O-V-A. Doesn't start with a K, it starts with a C. C-I-R-S-O-V-A, Cursova Magazine. Check them out today. I want to go ahead and throw out some love to Game Goblins. Some goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40k, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at GameGoblins.com. That's 501-224-GAME or GameGoblins.com. Conveniently located 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees, Game Goblins has expanded their store size, and there is plenty of room for exciting inventory and tables for play space. You'll like that space because Game Goblins has gaming events every day of the week. For all of your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your actual purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. First-time customers, mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Tell them Shane Plays sent you. And folks, if you do visit any of my sponsors, please tell them that you hear about them on the show. That helps them know that their advertising money and the relationship we've built is time and money well spent.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane Plays.
Hey, we're back on Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks for joining. And joined by D&D fanatic, OSR, old school gaming fanatic, Carl Heyl, who is also one of the hosts of the Crusader podcast and also one of the hosts for the Save or Die podcast. And he's also runs Arkansas RPG Con, which is coming this November. And you can go to Arkansas or go to arpgcon.com now because registrations are open. And you know, Carl, here's one of the things that's interesting about ARPGCon. I imagine there'll probably be a game for kids at some point.
That's absolutely true.
Okay, which leads us through an amazingly smooth segue into our main topic, which we have about 16 minutes roughly. You are the person I know that personally that has run games for kids more than anybody else I know. I mentioned earlier in the show that, you put out a pilot podcast of playing with your kids that was just wonderful. And so tell us your thoughts, tips, experiences on running D&D or RPG games for kids. And I guess, what should we define the age range of kids at? Like, what would you define it as?
17 all the way down to 3. I run games for all kinds of ages. And I've had even mixed tables where there's 6-year-olds and 15-year-olds at the same table. And all of that presents its own challenges. And the reason for all of this, the reason I started running games for kids was primarily because my nieces, nephews, my children all became interested in role-playing games. And so I was running games for them and then them and their friends. And then once they branched out and socialized, more and more people got brought in. And now it's something we do as a family. Me and my kids will go out to stores to play Dungeons and Dragons or other role-playing games with kids we've met through this hobby.
That's fantastic. So what would you say is the number one challenge? Because that's probably what people are like, well, man, I know it's going to be kind of crazy. What's the number one challenge that you've noticed recurs running for kids, and how have you adapted or, come up with a technique for it?
Well, it's one of the things. I think the number one challenge is keeping in mind that all kids are different and all kids present their own challenge just the same way that a group of adults would at the table. A group of adults will often present similar, sometimes the exact same challenges that a group of kids will do, but you don't have this scapegoat of saying these are kids. So you're just like Jerry's being weird.
Right.
And what I mean is that there's this kind of the same kind of emotional responses you would expect from a table of grown-ups, where they feel like they've not been fair to, or they feel like they've been slighted, or someone's not following the rules. You have to give kids credit that their feelings on that are valid, and maybe something wasn't fair, and you have to take a moment and think about that.
Mm-hmm. So do you run into... Well, let me ask you this: how do you always run D&D? Like, what game system are you running when you're running with kids?
I mean, it's almost always Dungeons and Dragons or something extremely adjacent to Dungeons and Dragons. I often run Swords and Wizardry Light. I often run Castles and Crusades. And I've been running Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition for kids recently. And I think in all of these circumstances, the rule set you use is less important than than following what the kids want to do. And let the rules fade into the background. Let the rules be secondary. If the kids want to do something that's not, defined in the rules or possibly goes against the rules, they want to play a certain character or a certain something, it could be, depending on the age, something they saw on TV, something they saw in a comic book, or something, one of their toys that they want to play with, they want to pretend to be a Ninja Turtle or whatever, find something that works closely to that and roll with it. Let the rules be secondary and let the play be primary. Right.
Now, are there any rules that you're like, no, we do have this one rule, and I make sure to leave that rule in there? I mean, is there, do they have to like roll to attack or anything? Or, I mean,
depending on the system, the only rule I am a huge stickler for is we take turns and we let each other have our turn and have our moment. Other than that, a lot of the times, I lean on dice a lot as a dungeon master, whether it's adults or kids. So we're always going to be rolling dice and figuring out outcomes. I mean, that's just something that I think is part of the staple of what makes a role-playing game different and great and interesting. But it's one of those things that, like, what I mean by that when I say don't let the rules hinder you is if, I had my niece in one game wanted to play a griffin. And she just loved griffins. That was her big thing at that time period. And we were playing basic expert Dungeons and Dragons. So there's not really rules for being a griffin, but there's a monster stat block.
Sure.
So we popped it open and said, there's what the griffin is in this game. That's what you're playing. Let's go for it. And it worked fine. It really didn't cause any problems at all. As long as everybody's on board and ready to move forward, all of those rules are very malleable.
So are you doing like one session adventures, or do you have an ongoing campaign where like you're leveling up a griffin, or anything like that?
That was luckily a one session game, but I do often do campaigns. And my kids often level up characters. I use milestone leveling almost exclusively when I run games for kids. I think that's almost the most fair system for them. And that way it doesn't become this competition of like trying to glean experience points from each other. In campaigns, there's a little bit more structure to campaigns. And that's really just part and parcel to a campaign versus a one shot. You have to have a little bit more structure when you're running a campaign.
All right. So how many years have you been running RPGs for kids, would you say?
Probably around at least 6 or 7 years where I've been kind of focused on that as a main part of my hobby. And that's about when my daughter started playing, when she was about 3 or 4.
Okay. So do you, what is the one thing that, and I know you've already said, let the rules fade in the background. So I think that's kind of a given, but what's one thing, like if you look back 6-7 years ago to now, that you see as like a big difference in your style of DMing or GMing a game, specifically because you've been running for kids?
I think it's made me an easier dungeon master. I'm a little bit less of a hard-nosed dungeon master now, and that's bled over to my games with adults in some ways. But also, I think it's brought out a more theatrical style in me, where I am now kind of I am big and presentational, whether I'm running any game now, because it's kind of just bled over. I think some of my main tips for running games for kids would be color coding is really helpful when running games for kids, because sometimes even just saying there's a door to the left and a door to the right, that doesn't necessarily even matter to them. They're not really thinking in those spaces. So if you want the communication to flow well throughout the table, make it a blue door and a red door. Give them colors to talk about as opposed to directions, north, west, south. If you just say there's a blue door, a red door, or put some symbology on them. There's a red door with a dragon on it and a blue door with a leafy tree emblem etched on the surface. You know, if they have that to talk about, it's going to make the communication go a lot better.
Okay, so do they, when it comes to problem solving or combats, do you see a drastic difference between kids and adults, like the kids' approach to it? Like I've done a little light role playing. When I tell my son bedtime stories, at certain points I'll stop and say, what happens next? And I'll let him help narrate the story. Mm-hmm. And sometimes his approach is, I would never have even seen what he wants to do or have happen. And it's just usually, you know, something, the role-playing of equivalent of shoving French fries up your nose. So what, I mean, do you see a big difference in how they approach that kind of, do they, well, let's make friends with these monsters, you know, or it's like, no, let's get them, you know?
Absolutely. And it's also to the point of, like, you have to understand that most adults that sit at a table to play Dungeons and Dragons have some amount of fantasy literature background, even if they've never played Dungeons and Dragons before. They've watched or read Lord of the Rings,
I default
or they watched
to
Game
medieval,
of Thrones.
Right, I default to medieval high fantasy like Tolkien. That's what I always default to in my head. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and kids don't necessarily have that. So I've had instances where they've wanted to talk to and befriend a skeletal warrior they met, because why wouldn't the skeletal warrior just talk to them? And you know, in
right. Hey, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It doesn't matter to them that what the preconceived notion of fantasy lit has been for the last 60, 70, 80, 100, you know, millennia. You know, this is an undead creature. But why can't they just go up and say, hey, skeleton? Because there's tons of cartoons where skeletons talk. I mean, in the D&D cartoon, they befriended a talking skeleton. Right. So, you know, there's precedent. Dungeons and Dragons precedent for it. So, you know, it's one of the things that you have to decide to either resist against or roll with. And I think it's easier to roll with it. I think it's easier to let them have those conversations and let them explore that space. And that way you can adjust that as they get older and they want a different experience from the game. And as they've gotten older, my kids have gotten older, I have seen that adjustment. I have seen that, you know, my daughter has now become a diehard 5th edition fan at 9 years old. She's like, 5th edition is my preferred game. And so it's something I've seen their preferences change and grow. You know, so seeing stuff like that where you have, like, they want to talk to skeletal warriors, or they want to talk to, I mean, they want to make everything a pet.
He'll be my friend. That Balrog will be my friend. Yeah.
They love making things pets. They love searching for pets. And I don't know if that's because of Pokemon or just because of an inherent natural reaction. You know, I asked my kids before I came on the show today, what's one advice you would give to a dungeon master running games for kids? And they both said, kids love pets.
Kids love pets. Okay, well, that's good to know. So, whether they're playing a ranger or not, be prepared to give them a pet or a druid or to let them find a pet. So, have you noticed, do you notice, do they stay more focused on the game? Because kids will focus intently on something that they're way into more than adults usually. Do they stay more focused for a shorter amount of time? Do you have to keep your game sessions shorter? Do you have problems keeping them focused, or, you know, compared to adults?
I think you kind of bridge the gap here where we're talking about they are very, very focused on it for the amount of time they are focused on it, and then it's gone. You know, the difference is adults can kind of like sit around for a while, wait for a bit, refocus in, you know, and then think about something else, go talk to somebody and then refocus in, where kids are going to be like, this is what I'm doing. This is exactly what I'm doing. I'm intently focused on this. And then boom, it's gone. And it's really, there's not a good chance of it coming back. So it is kind of more about that shorter, more kind of fast paced game session when you're running for kids.
Okay. So would you say like an hour, 2 hours?
I would say at 9 or under, about an hour. Okay. And then you can kind of increase that as you go up.
Have you seen the general belief out there is that role-playing is good for socialization or overcoming possible, you know, like awkwardness or something. Have you seen anything that you can objectively point at and say, I can tell that this kid has developed X good tendency or whatever from playing role-playing games?
I think it is something I can point out into my own son and his interactions with people. My son was a shyer kid and has kind of grown out of that shell. And I think partly due to not just the actual like act of playing a role-playing game, but because we are socializing with various groups of people on and off. Different groups get together, sit down, he meets them, he has this fun pastime to share with them, and then he meets other people to share it with. And I think that's helped break him out of his shell. I've seen it in myself. I was a non-reader before I started playing Dungeons and Dragons, and so it's helped improve my understanding of the world, because even, you can argue if Dungeons and Dragons increases your understanding of your environment and your social situation, but reading certainly does. And Dungeons and Dragons will make a reader out of you.
Have you noticed with kids that you run games for, have you noticed that outside of the game, has it changed their teamwork and problem solving or how they relate? Have you seen kids that maybe didn't get along, but then after playing D&D together, they get, anything like that?
Absolutely. And I've seen it multiple times, and it's fantastic. Just seeing them bridge that gap of understanding, and now they're friends because they became friends at the table. And that's my best friend, who's been my friend since I was 10 years old. Our friendship was formed over Dungeons and Dragons.
So my man Carl wanted to share some additional notes for running RPGs for kids, and he wanted to specify that most of the notes that he gave during the live show were running for actually kids, not teens. So, he mentioned towards the beginning of the discussion that, he's run games anywhere from 3 to 17 as far as defining a younger player. But he further clarified later as we were talking that running for teens isn't usually very different than running for adults. And he pointed out that one thing that's pretty important, running a game with kids and adults at the same time is fine. And running a game with adults and teens at the same time is fine. But you run into some really interesting issues where if you try to run a game with teens and kids at the same time. And I said, what age would you draw the line? And he said, well, it's really kind of hard to, but, it depends on the kids. 13 and up is usually probably a pretty good place to, make the distinction. And he's noted that, for example, if there's two 16-year-olds and one 13-year-old and two 10-year-olds, the 13-year-old's behavior will skew one way or the other. So the 13-year-olds are kind of in the middle and will go one direction or the other. He said it's weird to watch. So just be aware that when you have teens and younger kids in the same game, those are the dynamics that he's seen that are kind of the hardest to, I guess, overcome or whatever. I guess the teens will dominate the kids or that kind of thing. So I've noticed personally when, I'll tell a story to my son, and I started doing this when he was about 3. He's 5 now. When I tell him a bedtime story and let him choose what's going to happen in certain points, it will definitely go in directions I don't expect. And I'll have a specific series of events I want to happen to lead to a final outcome that usually teaches some kind of lesson while he's having fun. And he will absolutely change things up and go in directions or want to do things that I don't anticipate. And there were a couple of times where I literally was almost arguing with my son over what was happening until I finally just put it a little bit more in neutral and let him go the directions he wanted to go and found ways to kind of react and tailor and adapt to what he wanted to do so I could still kind of reach a goal I wanted to reach while he was also reaching the goal he wanted to reach. And, sometimes I figured he would want to fight and he wouldn't want to fight. And sometimes I didn't want there to be a fight and he absolutely, my goodness, was going to have a fight. And, he's never going to ride a horse. He's going to ride a half dragon, half dinosaur horse. So you just have to, kind of roll with it and let him, if you're really going to let him participate. And tabletop RPGs are participatory, shared. So especially with kids, you've got to expect the unexpected and just roll with it. Modify, just keep kind of rolling with it and adapting and having fun, and put yourself in that same mental space that kids are in, and you'll surprise yourself by how much fun the chaos and just weirdness is. And you might learn something yourself. You'll definitely learn stuff about the kids. I've learned a lot about my son with how he role plays and participates in the storytelling. So I want to give a few resources here for younger gamers. First, Dungeons & Dragons has Young Adventurers guides. These are for ages 8 to 12. That's the suggested age range, grades level 3 to 7. They have warriors and weapons, wizards and spells, monsters and creatures, and dungeons and tombs. And these are sort of they're the Dungeons & Dragons rules or information, but they're presented for a younger reading audience. So it's almost like core rule books, but for younger readers. And then for even younger readers, they have Dungeons & Dragons has children's books. These are cute. For age range 3 to 7, grade level preschool through 2nd grade. And they have the ABCs of D&D and the 1, 2, 3s of D&D. And that's where you can kind of learn your letters and numbers. But with D&D, it could be D is for dragon, I guess. That kind of thing. So those look really cute. There'll be links in the show notes, or just go to Amazon or whatever and do your searching. And then finally, there are some role-playing games that are out there specifically for kids. And probably the biggest one that I know of is called No Thank You Evil from Monty Cook Games. And in fact, there's a interview I did with Shanna Germain a while back from Monty Cook Games about No Thank You Evil. It's very specifically designed for young kids. And there's plenty of other tabletop role-playing games out there that are geared more towards younger gamers. One would be the My Little Pony Tales of Equestria, the storytelling game. And I've heard many good things. I've heard adults, whatever, everybody says this is actually a really good game. So, but that's a known property that's for younger kids. So it might be an interesting way to engage your younger players, and that would also probably be a good game to get both younger players and adults playing, because there's so many people that know that property, that IP of My Little Pony. A few more games out there. I just did some searching around that people would recommend. Another one is Mouse Guard, and that's about little heroic mice. There's another one called Happy Birthday Robot. Of course, you can use Pathfinder and Dungeons & Dragons, but you're going to need to tailor it a little, younger, a little bit differently. And then I did a search, and I found a post on Reddit called Good RPG for Very Young Kids. I'll just read out a few, of the titles I see here. I haven't played any of these. I'm most familiar with No Thank You Evil, and that is a really interesting game, and I do recommend it. I think it's very accessible for kids on multiple levels, from how it's designed to how it's played to the incredibly open-ended nature of character design. But here's some, again, these games I'm throwing out now I'm not familiar with, but one is called Hero Kids, Amazing Tales. There's one called Pugmire, Bubblegum Shoe, Dungeon Squad, Risus. The one person said, Risus. The core rules are literally 4 pages long, and characters can be made in minutes. It's geared toward one-session games. But anyway, it sounds really fun. Somebody else said 100% Risus. Their party has a pink fairy unicorn trainer, a destruction wizard, a candy maker who specializes in rolling pin melee, a pirate with poor sense of direction, a clockwork knight. And today they're going to find the origins of pink magic crystals and where they're all disappearing to. So Dagger, basically D&D for kids. Mice and Mystics. Anyway, it goes on and on. Golden Sky Stories, Lasers and Feelings. Somebody else is mentioning No Thank You Evil. Beyond the Wall and Other Adventures. So it just, it keeps going on. Jump on out there and do a little bit of research for yourself. both from, I've seen Carl just jump in there and run these games. He has a lot of fun. When I've done stuff with younger kids, especially my son, my best advice is just jump on in there and have some fun. And it's really, all role-playing is kind of a magical learning experience in a way. But when you bring that energy and open-mindedness and enthusiasm and just craziness of kids, it just goes to the next level. So I recommend it. And if you try it for the first time, or if you're an experienced GM, DM running for kids, or if you're a kid and want to share your stories with role-playing, I'd love to hear from you. All right. I wish we had longer to talk on it, but I got to wrap us. That's fascinating insight. Carl, I've got to do the bad joke of the week with you, pal.
I'm
Here
ready.
It comes. You ready? I went into a pet shop and asked for 12 bees. The shopkeeper counted out 13 and handed them over. "You've given me one too many," I said. "That one is a freebie," he said.
Pretty good.
You can use that as an encounter in your games. Carl, thanks so much, man. Everybody, thanks for listening to Shane Plays.
Okay. All right, roll 2d6. 4 and a 5. That's a good roll. Let's see what he gets. Tomas, you blast him with green energy, and the sea serpent, one of its heads goes and falls down into the water. All right. All right, roll.
He gets an M&M or something.
Yep.
5 and 2.
5 and 2. Those are good rolls. Let's see what we get. It hits.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.